So, I'm going to get out of the way and let Gideon continue helping us think through more information in light of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Gideon.
Last night was a real downer, and I'm hoping to kind of pick up from there. One of the vignettes that I brought to your attention when I spoke yesterday was from testimony that I interpreted in a town called Nelspruit in the northern parts of South Africa. I tried last night to juxtapose just 2 or 3 pieces of testimony by victims of gross human rights violations, testimony that was brought before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission during the 2 years that I worked for the Commission in 96 and 97. The vignettes that I chose last night had testimony from people who were victims from both sides of the conflict, if you will, in South Africa. Although to say there were 2 sides in that conflict is to oversimplify it. But we had testimony from someone who was a victim of state brutality, and we had testimony from someone who was a victim of an act of violence from people who were fighting in the resistance movements against apartheid. In the testimony from one of these latter victims, a question was raised, which is what I want to start with today. Johannes Petrus Ruus was a survivor of a landmine explosion on a farm in the far north of South Africa. He lost a child and a wife in that explosion after several days of them lingering in hospital. So let me read you just the final few sentences that I used last night from that testimony to raise this question. That is the big question embedded in the heartbreak of the realities that we had to face up to as South Africans during the course of the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So this is Mr. Ruus. I went back to the scene of the explosion because I knew that part of my wife, from her calf down, was in the wreck. We went to see if we could find this in the wreck so that we could bury that part of her. But unfortunately, we couldn't find anything. What we did find was a part of my son's forehead. He had a hole on the left-hand side of his forehead. Part of his brains were on the seat, and I picked it up in a tissue and folded it and went and buried it in my house. Do you know how it feels, Mr. Chairperson? Can you just imagine how it feels to have to find part of your 8-year-old's brain and have to go and bury it? Can you just imagine it? What it does to a person. How can you be human thereafter? So this is the question that I want to start with. How can you be human thereafter? The move I want to make in this lecture is from heartbreak to wonder. Because what made my own experience of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission a process of formation rather than a process of disintegration was the opportunity that I had to take these experiences out of the work of the Commission into my conversations with God. And I was able to do that because of my exposure to the Psalms as a template, if you will, for engaging God from heartbreak. So last night I looked at Psalm 137 and Psalm 88 and Psalm 51 as practice rooms, if you will, for my encounter with God as it was for me during the time of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think that unlike many of my colleague interpreters working for the Commission, I did not have to resort to drugs and drink in order to cope with this extremely painful process because of things that I had been exposed to before I worked for the Truth Commission. So in 96 and 97 I worked for the Commission, but there were these encounters specifically with the Psalms that took place in 94, 95 that I think enabled me to draw those experiences into my conversations with God and into my prayer life. And that helped me to not break apart quite as much as I might have otherwise. Not that I didn't break apart, and not that I'm not still broken. I think my encounter with the Psalms in a more sort of intense way started in December of 1994. I was trying to finish my PhD dissertation, which, you know, for the scholars among you might know that that's not so much fun. Those, you know, final weeks of trying to finish a dissertation, and I wasn't quite getting things done the way that I had wanted to. So I asked my wife if she would take our two small daughters away on a vacation at the cottage that her parents had at the South African seaside. And so she did. Initially I thought this would be sort of 5 weeks that I could just knuckle down and work on this dissertation while they were frolicking on the beach and enjoying the sunshine, that being the summer in the Southern Hemisphere. And what I did was to just work on this body of paper and text and try and shape it into a dissertation that my dissertation advisor would be willing to accept. I would start work in the morning and I would work until I was too tired to keep working, and then I would fall asleep, and I would sleep until I woke up, and then I would work. And what happened over the course of those 5 weeks is that my sort of working rhythm fell out of phase with the usual cycle of day and night. And that messed with my emotional life. My circadian rhythms were out of phase, and so by about week 4, I had, as a result, become a profoundly upset person. And I could no longer imagine why anybody would want to write a PhD dissertation, which I think is also a common experience among graduate students. And so I decided to take a day off from writing this cursed piece of work, and to spend some time in reflection and reading something. And I thought, you know, what would be good to read would be something non-narrative, would be something from the Bible. What could I read? I'll read Psalms. And with a short story in the back of my mind from South Africa, I decided to read Psalm 119. Just a quick step away from the story. I really love this particular short story. It's about a staunch Calvinist congregation in the northwest of South Africa, where the pastor announces the hymn during a church service, and before he announces the specific verses of the hymn, he has a seizure. No one notices because he's just standing there, and the hymn is, well, it's Psalm 119. And so the short story continues to tell how the congregation in shock starts singing the versified version of Psalm 119, and eventually the little 10-year-old boy who's pumping the organ, because this is the 19th century in the hinterlands, gets too tired, and they have to get prisoners from the local jailhouse to come and pump the organ, and the organist has to be fortified with communion wine. And so the whole story goes on and on. They sing most of the Sunday away. And with that short story, which I've loved all my life, in the back of my mind, I decided I would spend the Saturday reading Psalm 119.